Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Airport Wild Podcast. I have to apologize for the somewhat poor audio at the moment. I snapped the cord on my normal microphone, so I need to replace that, and that'll be done before the next episode is released, little and recorded. Um, so I want to get into a little bit about today's episode. Today we're going to be going over PCP Air Rifles. You probably already read that, or probably inferred that from the title. Maybe you've read the show notes already. But yeah, PCP Air Rifles. We're going to be going into what PCP stands for, as far as this type of air rifle goes. And we're going to be joined by Jim Walton. He's an all-around air rifle guru. I've shot a lot with Jim. He's a fantastic shot, knows a ton about the subject, and we're really looking forward to letting you guys hear what he has to say. Hopefully, everybody can get some great information out of this session. I'm also joined by Cody Bashuska of Lewmakers Wildlife Management. Also use PCP rifles a lot in his day-to-days, and is also a fantastic source. I'm going to apologize for a little bit in the forefront as well for the audio in this. We had some technical difficulties that we really couldn't circumnavigate, but we're gonna go through it. Get through with us, bear with us. So there's some really cool information in here, and I think you're really gonna enjoy it. So yeah, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's Airport Wild.
We're more a bunch of geeks with guns and so forth. We call it smack.
Yeah, so Jim, welcome to the Airport Wild Podcast.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad to have you on here. So give it a little introduction for yourself. Your name's Jim Walton, but maybe give a little background about yourself and maybe
Sure.
how you got into this kind of stuff.
Okay, yeah. As you just said, my name is Jim Walton. Let me see here. A little bit about myself. I've been doing wildlife, pretty much pest management for over 10 years now. Started right here in Arizona. Huge lover of animals, just really irritated with what man has done to make us have to do what we have to do to a point, so I got into it to figuring that, we're more a bunch of geeks with guns and so forth. So I figured I'd rather use the geek portion more than the gun portion, but it seems it's more 50-50 sometimes. But I got into it as a really funny thing really quickly. I got into it on a necessity because I had two working dogs that do protection work, and they both had, the big one had cancer. And in order for me to get into that, I had to find a resource for a food source. And it ended up being these Eurasian collared doves is what we ended up feeding our dogs in order for them to basically survive. So that's how I really got into this whole field. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty unique way to get into it.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's definitely a good way. Definitely having that food source and just being able to give them the raw meat. Jim, you and I have known each other for a few years now. I know you're a hell of a shot, especially with the PCP.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
So I kind of figure you're the one that go through this. So this is kind of for the folks that maybe want to use an air rifle, maybe like in an airport scenario, or just want to get into them, period. So can you maybe kind of give a breakdown, like what actually is a PCP air rifle? Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, okay. So a PCP, it's an acronym for pre-charged pneumatic. So it's basically a compressed air in a cylinder or in probably a bottle or thing of that sort on these type of rifles. They're pellet rifles. Some people keep thinking they're BB guns, but they're actually pellet rifles coming in 177 caliber all the way up to, I've seen as big as 50 caliber. So they come in all sorts and sizes. The neat thing about them is that the being a pre-charged pneumatic gun is it gives you a little bit more opportunities than sometimes using firearms, depending on what you're trying to get across and what what your intended target is, and of course of the location and so forth, So a pre-charged pneumatic rifle is what it is.
Okay, and then you kind of already went into a little bit. So definitely having a PCP has definitely got some or just an air rifle in general, I suppose, does have some advantages to, I guess, a conventional firearm, rifle, shotguns. Because I'm just thinking, like, well, for one, they're quieter generally.
Yes.
And I mean, and with that, I mean, if you do miss, I mean, these are, I mean, they are precision tools. I mean,
Yes.
I mean, you can really thread the needle with these things. It's unreal what they're capable of. But definitely you need off those like multiple shots. But with that too, and now that there are other kinds of air rifles, right? I mean, you got like spring powered, for instance. By any chance you have like any benefits to maybe why you should go with a PCP versus a spring power, or maybe a spring power? Like, what are the pros and cons of each?
Okay, so if you're we both work in that wildlife industry, so in as far as I can see, PCP has a lot better advantages than the spring and so forth powered air rifles. One is when it boils down at the end of the day, it's an ethical shot. So I want to make sure I have enough kinetic energy being produced, and that PCPs that's at the top end of it, where the spring powered and things of that sort are not as powerful. Don't get me wrong, they will definitely take game, but they're not, they're accurate, but not as accurate, and they don't have the distance. So they both have a great place to a point, but I'm not a huge component of the spring break barrel type rifles for this environment. Depending on how far you're planning to shoot, so the PCPs have a better accuracy at longer distance and that kinetic energy, which is what we want for that lethality at the end of the day. So that's.
I'm right there with you, Jim. I think we might hopefully you're still there.
I'm sorry, did you lose me?
Yeah, you kind of stopped for a second, but we got you back. So yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, you definitely get a lot more. You definitely get a lot more power out of a PCP than you can out of a spring, and because I think a lot of the spring powered tends to be more of an across the pond kind of setup. Like I know with some of their regulations in the UK, they're more popular, but I think there's a power factor they have to stay within.
Yes. Yeah, there's like in the UK you have a FAC license, which is actually a firearms license that you need to have in order to shoot a PCP rifle. Whereas, and that is anything over 12 foot-pounds of energy, you'd have to have one of those licenses. And from talking with quite a few people over the pond and so forth, it's very hard to get and it's real easy to lose. Let's put it that way. So a lot of people don't have them, but some people do have them. But more people there have, some really, really good break barrels. Also,
Right. That definitely seems like that's where all the technology is coming out of, as far as the brake barrel, the spring piston, that kind of stuff. But like I know, well, I'm kind of thinking one major drawback that I can think of to a spring powered versus going with a PCP is, it seems like spring powers they're just scope wreckers. They get that double recoil going, and
exactly that's what a lot of people, you have to use an artillery hold. It's a military type hold when you're using a break barrel type spring action type air rifle, pellet rifle, because of that jarring, forward and back from the spring, because it's pushing forward and the recoil is pushing back. So it wrecks a lot of scopes. And uh, I tell people, if you want a good scope, try it out first on a Springer before you put on your PCP, because I mean, a lot of scopes get wrecked. I mean, some really good names too. I'm quite shocked that an air rifle can have that kind of recoil compared to a firearm. So yeah.
Right, but then you just described it too. Is you got not only the recoil, the conventional recoil coming back into your shoulder, but with that spring lurching forward, you got recoil going that way, so that effectively that scope's getting torn in two different directions. It's just wrecking the erector sets in them.
Exactly. That little ocular spring gets tore up. It usually gets misaligned or something to that effect, so it's almost, some guys have said, I don't, don't take my word for it, but I've heard people say it's equivalent to shooting almost a 50 BMG when it comes to that kind of recoil, not the actual physical recoil, but the jarring of it to the scopes, so.
Right, which is insane for something that most folks think of like the what's that movie, A Christmas Story? Like, you're gonna shoot your eye out, kid. Like,
yeah, exactly.
But
yeah.
they actually, they do have some intricacies to them.
Sure.
So I mean, that's this with the spring power, some drawbacks. I'm trying to think. Is there any drawbacks that you noticed to PCPs? That like maybe some things about them that you'd like to see changed.
Well, here's the neat thing about it, Jesse, is that honestly, PCPs. Let me put it this way: air guns in general, pellet rifles, are the fastest gun sport right now in the United States. It's been like the last 3 years; they have been just whopping over everything. A lot of guys have been changing out from going from firearms to using these things because there's more accessibility. Price is the biggest thing as far as cost of ammo and so forth. But as far as the negativity portion, there's not really much for negativity. It's more of the human usage is where I get a little bit more negative, is where people choose calibers where, it's not really necessary to use that kind of caliber on a certain animal and so forth, or you might need a bigger step up to the next caliber. That's the only thing I can really see. But as far as PCPs, they're constantly, the technology has changed. I mean, I have a day state that's 8 years old. And to look at that right now, I'm sitting there going, it's a dinosaur, because the technology has changed so much. I mean, my rapid air weapons, compared to that, it's only 2 years old. And looking at my day state, and I said, they're two different animals. I mean, the precision shooting back then was amazing, but now it's leaps and bounds. So I can't really say there's any negativity to the actual PCPs as far as that goes. I think the technology is getting better and better. They're getting to a point where they're going to be probably, we start putting inert gases and so forth into them or whatever. So you get even more power out of your shots, so I can't see any negativities at this point. So.
No, I mean, no negativities. That's fantastic. I mean, I've had a blast running them, and but like you were saying, it's more. You brought up that it's more the human aspect to them that's which isn't anything against the PCPs themselves. But I mean, I'm right there with you. I mean, it's no different than guys. I mean, with firearms, you'll get some guys that think. In order to do anything, to be able to harvest any kind of game, you got to shoot a 300 Win Mag when a 243 Winchester will do the exact same job.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, I could definitely see that. And then with air rifles, I mean, the popular knowledge doesn't seem to be there. It seems to be like this: the air gun world is this smaller kind of niche market, and the guys that are in it know it, but the guys that are getting into it, like myself a couple of years ago, it's a whole new mentality. It's a little bit it's similar to firearms, but it's its own animal.
Yeah, well, as you know, when you came out with me and so forth, that you can tell that you're not shooting at 2,300 feet per second, so it's not a real straight shot. It's more of an arced shot. So your skill set. I've had guys from police units and so forth come and train with me, and they got a big chip on their shoulders, and they take their first shot, and then the fourth shot, and they were saying, why am I not hitting it? And it's like, because it's a different way of thinking. Yeah, they still shoot, but the sad part about it is that like I said, you're shooting at an arc, so you really need to learn your ballistics. You need to learn what's behind your shot, just like anything else, when you're shooting anything. But it's a huge difference in thinking, and it actually is one of the best ways to learn how to shoot a firearm and understanding the ballistics and so forth, because you have to really know that because of the lack of power. You see?
Oh, for sure. I'm right. I mean, I'm right there with you. I think I've become a better with firearms. I became better at longer distances just through, one going and shooting with you, and then just in my own time, shooting lesser powered comparatively, air rifles. And I mean, 100 yards with one of these PCP. Well, maybe not with one of your really nice ones, but look with a PCP is like shooting 400 or 500, 600 yards with a conventional firearm. I mean, it's I can definitely see that because you have to go for that lob. I mean, even if your sight, I mean, I shoot a Benjamin Marauder. I mean, I'm zeroed at 25 for the kind of work that I'm doing. I tend to be prepared more for those close in shots.
Yeah.
But it's such a lob that even at 10 yards, I'm holding, I mean, mills under. At 5 to 10, 15, even 15 yards, I'm still holding under to get that kind of level precision. And then after you zero, you start going the other way. And then, of course, then as the farther out you go, the more sharp your arc gets. So it's definitely cool trying to verify that.
Well, the one thing that I've always found fascinating is, and here's where a lot of the technologies come, Jesse, is that honestly, like I was saying, I had that old Daystate Air Ranger, and now I have a Raw. So back then, I used a 22. I mean, I'm seeing a 25 caliber Air Ranger, putting out 50 foot-pounds of killing energy. Okay, now my 22 that I have right now has.
I think we cut out again with you, Jim. Oh, there we go. Maybe not. I don't know if you can still hear me, Jim. I still. There it goes. Hey, can you repeat that? You froze on this and I lost you.
All right. Sorry about that. So what I was saying was, on my 25 caliber PCP, it's a 52 foot-pound rifle shooting a 25 grain pellet. Now my new Raw rapid air weapons in 22 has the same weight in grains as the 25 and puts out more energy. So it's amazing how the technology has gone from 7 years ago to where it is now, where you don't need a 25 caliber to use in order to take down the same animal that you can actually use in a 22. You see what I'm saying? And that goes across the whole board as far as the different calibers. They're just getting better and better and better as far as that goes. Now, my only concern that I've always worried about is, some states are allowing, they're going by caliber, but not by energy, and when they're allowing game and fish for hunting. So here in Arizona, you can shoot a peccary or javelina, same animal, with it has to be a 35 caliber. The sad part is there's idiots out there going with a 35 caliber air rifle, but it's not putting out enough energy to kill it ethically. You know what I'm saying? Where they should go by energy, not by caliber.
Right, and maybe that's something we can pick up from our brethren across the pond and kind of, because they do the energy laws and
exactly.
But maybe that's. Yes, I mean that's a very good point. I know I haven't thought about that. With that would be a good way to do it. And it's just something else that you got to think about. Because I mean, when in the conventional firearm sense, everybody thinks of like, oh, this caliber is more powerful than that caliber, and then as far as like bullet weights, like a 7mm 08 Remington. You can shoot a 140 grain versus a 150 grain or even a 120 grain bullet, and then how that's going to impact for whatever you're using it for. And so it's even more intricate with air rifles as you get those different power levels, even across two similar, what you think might be similar guns, might downrange be performed totally different.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I mean that's definitely something else you got to think about. And then, like you were just saying, is you were shooting a 25, and now you went to a 22 with the same energies.
Yes, sir.
But to get that same energy, because you're losing, I mean, I know you said about the same weight, but you're going to have to lose some mass, so you're going to increase your velocities. But
correct.
when you increase your velocities, you're going to flatten out that trajectory. You're going to lose some of that hump in your ballistics. I mean, so you're going to shoot flatter, and it's going to make those longer shots, easier, more manageable.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, I'm just thinking back to shooting with you. Was it year before last?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was watching, and I watched you take the shot on 3 collar doves on a fence line, and we're 92 yards, and 3 shots, ping, 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 and it was done deal. I mean, there was no guesswork, there was nothing like that. You just put it on, let her go.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean that's versus again my Marauder. I mean, I'm shooting at a 30-degree angle to reach that far.
I mean,
it's definitely it was definitely an eye opener seeing just what these PCPs are capable of. So now we've kind of talked about what these firearms. Well, actually, I want to take a step back for a second. You mentioned the power levels in the hunting. I mean, well, like you said, I mean, there's guys making 50 caliber air rifles. I mean, I think I've seen photos of guys hunting plains game in Africa with some of these 45 and 50 caliber air rifles. I mean, as long as you're I'll cut out that dead spot. As long as you're mindful of what you're doing and what you want it to do, and tailor your setup correctly, I mean, there's almost nothing you can't take with one of these. Maybe not one of the big 5, but certainly almost anything in North America. It's pretty unreal. But yeah, so now we've kind of known what these things are capable of. For anybody that's interested in trying one of these or picking one up, or maybe let's talk about what you need. Like, what if I came into the game, I know nothing about PCPs, I want to start shooting a PCP air rifle. What do I got to start? What do I got to get first? What should I learn first? What should I buy first?
All right, so there's 2 sides of the coin on that. So if you're looking to get into PCPs just to plink, or do a little bit of this and that with it, that's one thing. But if you're doing it like on the level that we're doing it, to do it as a pest management type aspect, that's a whole different thing. Actually, it's a little bit more costly, but there's a reason behind it, because once again, it's about that whole ethical shooting thing. So you can walk in to a PCP for $300 to $400, and that's with a PCP that actually is a bottled rifle, meaning that it has a bottle instead of a tube, which is what holds the air in it and so forth. And those are fine depending on what you're doing. I mean, I have friends in California that do nothing but ground squirrels, so he doesn't need a raw, he doesn't need a FX or any of these big name day states and so forth, or Air Force or any of these big name guns to do that kind of work. So I think a lot of it has to do is you really need to sit down and figure out what your game is that you're planning to shoot. And roughly, will one rifle do it, or will several rifles you'll need for different things? Like I have one gun that's set up strictly for birds. I have a 357 that is set up strictly for predators. So, it all depends on what you're planning to shoot and so forth. And of course the distance. So the tools you'll really need can be, of course, an air rifle, which there's several types. You can get a bullpup, which are a lot shorter. Carbine would be your next size as far as that goes, and then a full-size rifle, which I like myself. And you can get those either tubed, or you can get them with a bottle, a carbon fiber bottle, or a aluminum bottle that usually holds anywhere from 480 cc's all the way up to, right now, I think 560 cc's worth of air. Okay, so that's about, and most of those are holding about 2,900 pounds worth of air, roughly in that range. So that's a lot of pressure. So
yeah, that's a lot of pressure behind it.
Yeah. And speaking on that pressure part, in order to get these things filled, you can do two different things. You can get a hand pump. It's not your typical pump, like, it looks like a bicycle pump, but it's not. It's a high pressure pump, which pumps in thousands of pounds, not hundreds. And you can do that, and those are fine for a gun that has a tube, because most of those tube guns are like 180 cc's, maybe 200 cc's. So it's not so bad on pumping, but you're gonna get a workout. You're probably still have to put 50 to 100, strokes on that pump in order to fill it up to 200 bar or something in that point. If it's a bottle gun, there's no way you wouldn't even want to do it. Forget, you won't have enough time in a day trying to pump it up. So that's where you'd want to get into a designated air system, like a scuba tank. It could be anywhere from the aluminum tanks all the way to the carbon fiber tanks, which is what is the most popular, because it holds a lot more air. And since these guns are getting higher and higher pressure holding at the top end, so 4,500 psi tanks is what most people would run. But it starts getting expensive, because you're looking at you buy a gun, like you have a Marauder, so you can get a Marauder, say $500 range and so forth. Then you've got to buy a tank, or like I said, or you could buy a pump. They call it a stirrup pump, actually. Those are about anywhere from $190 to about $400, depending on the brand. So you can choose either which one, or if you spend the money, just go get a carbon fiber tank. Those, once again, are brand new, or about mid $600, and so forth. So the neat thing about the pump is you don't need to fill it up. The stirrup pump produces its own pressure to pump up something, whereas the designated carbon fiber tank or steel tank, aluminum tank, those scuba tanks, those you either have to have your own dedicated compressor, or you need to go to a scuba shop and get it filled up. So it can be time consuming and so forth, but it depends on your budget. So those are the main things you need right off the bat in order to get shooting to a point.
Right.
And then, of course,
So
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, one thing I was gonna add on to that too is, I don't think I've ever seen a PCP with iron sights. So somebody might want to pick up an optic, like a scope or something like that, as well.
Exactly. And the optics are all, it depends once again on, there's so many optics out there, and they come from good to bad to best. I see guys are running Night Force scopes on air rifles, and I always think that's kind of funny to spend almost $1,500 to $3,000 on a scope on your rifle, but these guys take it that seriously. And then you see people that use center point, from Crossman or whoever puts it out, and so there's variables there. So depending on how far you're shooting or how close you're shooting, some people use red dots, and so forth, holographics type scopes and so forth. And then there's other people like me who use like a 6x24x50, because I shoot past 100 to my longest shot the other day was 295 yards at a pigeon, and 2 shots had it down. So it's capable of doing that kind of stuff. And so the optics is the next major buy you would get after you get your rifle. And there's a lot of rule of thumb there. Some people use it, some people don't. I'm a strong believer is what best fits your budget, but some people have, whatever you spent on your rifle, you should probably spend close to 50% of that, or close to or that on your optics. But it all depends on what you're planning to shoot, so what distances you're planning to shoot and what animals you plan to shoot, because that makes a huge difference. So your optics is your next biggest buy outside of all that. And then the pellets are the cheapest. That's out of all of this, the pellets are the cheapest things. You're going from anywhere from 5 cents to maybe 75 cents on slugs or stuff like that. And that's a whole another game we could talk about too, is pellets compared to using slugs. And that's a whole different way of thinking, but it's more like shooting a firearm when you're using slugs, because the ballistics are so much more defined and it cuts through the winds. It cuts through the air so much better. So yeah.
Right. So when you say slugs, is that a purpose built projectile for an air rifle, or can somebody just go out like buy like to a reloading store and just buy a box of X bullet for that's normally designated for a firearm? I mean, just want to make sure like somebody doesn't.
Yeah, I've heard of people trying that, and it never produced great results by going and buying just the bullet in general for a firearm for people that do reloading. It's it just never shot correctly from what I understand from anybody that's actually shot them. So these are designated designed for air rifles. The twist is everything with this. So um I think my twist is like a 12, no, is it 12.7 or something like that, or 11.7 twist. So it depends on the rifle, because some of these rifles today with the technology can't run slugs, and some can. Like my rifle's built for pellets and slugs, so I have that nice choice, which is really great. And then my other pellet rifles will not take slugs. It will only take pellets, because of the twist rate or being a choked barrel, that kind of thing. So it makes a huge difference there. So if I'm shooting anything past 100 yards, it tends to probably have a slug in it, most likely, because a pellet it's very similar to a shuttlecock when you play badminton. It's, you can hit that thing as hard as you want, and it goes somewhat fast for a few seconds, and it slows down even faster. And that's exactly the same way of thinking when it comes to the pellet. It's shaped the same way, whereas the ballistics on a bullet is so more coefficient that sometimes it picks up even more energy down the road down range than what you would think. So it works real well.
Right. I mean, what's that considered in the firearms world? Your ballistic coefficient. Yeah, it's just going to cut through the wind a lot better, and you're going to retain that velocity and that energy downrange. I know that's a big thing, especially with today with everybody wanting to shoot 1,000 yards to a mile with firearms, and you hear that BC thrown around a lot, and it's pretty cool. Well, probably it comes into more of effect in an air rifle than it ever will in a firearm.
Yes, sir.
So with these slugs, like what kind of weights do you shoot? I mean, I'm assuming they're measured in grains, but
Yeah. So okay. So I'll give you examples. So I have two raws, which is a HM 1000X in 22 caliber, and then the same thing, but is in 357. So the 22 shoots, because of the energy it puts out. A normal 22 rifle would shoot probably like an 18 grain pellet. Mine shoots anywhere from a 27 to a 32 grain pellet. Okay, or slug. I'm sorry. Or either. Don't get me wrong. It shoots. When I'm shooting pellets, I shoot normally a 25 grain pellet. But when I'm shooting slugs, I usually shoot a 27 grain to about 32 grain slug, depending on what I'm shooting at. But they do come in grains, and the nice thing about the slugs is you get more weight out of the slugs, because there's only so many manufacturers that make pellets, but they don't have a huge variety in the same caliber in grains. Where in the slug world, a lot of these guys that are making like Nielsen specialty ammo, they actually or your Rat Sniper, those guys actually will make a 22 caliber, but it might have 4 to 5 different grain settings, so it gives you a lot more options for what you plan to use it for, downrange. The 357, it used to be able to shoot a 81 grain pellet, but now it can't, because it's now putting out 222 foot-pounds of killing energy. So it shoots 142 grain slug at 960 feet per second. So it's brutal. It's such a brutal shot. When it hits that animal, you're totally surprised at what it can do. So yeah. So and like I said, it goes all the way up to some 50 caliber air rifles. So they come in, there's I've seen, was it 400 to 600 grain slugs. So those are huge. Those are something
Yeah,
guys are using bison. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm hearing these numbers, and I'm just kind of attributing, like you were saying, like the one that's doing 960. I mean, you're talking like 9 mil handgun, 38 special kind of power.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah, I mean,
it's so funny because um, if you were to take the ballistics or from maybe what is it 5 feet away, my 357 is equal to a 45 caliber at the same distance. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Handgun.
that's
So it's brutal.
right. And but being in rifle, I mean, it's gonna be a whole lot more accurate than that 45 will be too.
Oh, exactly.
Uh,
Yeah.
although there's a 1911 owner just shaking. Um,
Yeah.
um, no, yeah, that's pretty wicked. I mean, it's just the more, I mean, talking to you and reading online, and it's just unreal what these, uh, for one, just what they're capable of, and then two, just how versatile they are.
Yes.
So like, so let's go and kind of go back to air rifles, kind of in what we do for a living with wildlife control. I know like some of the things I love about them. For one, they're quiet.
Yes.
I mean, yours, you're putting out a little bit more speed. You're cutting that air. You're kind of hitting that, approaching that sonic boom speed. That sound barrier a little bit more than I am.
Yes.
But I mean, you can, as long as you're concealed, and I mean, you can take multiple shots in some instances.
Yeah.
If
Yeah. I'm sorry, Jesse. Go
No,
ahead.
I was just gonna say it's like if you, like, say you're trying to shoot like collared doves, like you got a collared dove on a wire or something, or on a farm, and you shoot, and you shot for some reason you didn't adjust it, you shot for 20 yards when you should have shot for 30. um so you shot under him. He's not going to hear it. I mean, he might look around a little bit like, hey, kind of what was that, if he hears that pellet go by, but he's going to give you a chance to readjust. And um so just having that, I mean, it's not like even with a 22 rim fire, like an actual firearm, you're not going to get that second shot.
No.
You hear that crack, he's gone.
Exactly. So the neat part here's a reason why I use air rifles in this environment. So working in wildlife and pest management aspect of it, just like you were just saying, what it gives you is two unique things I find fascinating. Is it gives you a really quick follow-up shot when you need it, but the other thing it gives you is multiple shots, because these animals, like if you take a 30-06 out and you go to shoot coyote 22-250 or anything like that, everybody in miles hears it. Where in the air rifle, if you're 50 yards away, you didn't hear it. You didn't hear anything. All you're going to hear is a whiz go by you at the pellet. So it gives you that. It gives you that follow-up shot if you need it, and two, if you're going after multiple animals, it gives you another chance to shoot the animal behind it or whatever you're going after, because they don't know that sound. That sound is so alien to them that they have no clue. If anything, especially when I'm shooting coyotes, they find it fascinating to hear that sound. And I've had 4 coyotes come on one set, shot the first female, and 2 males came in, and they were like, "What the heck?" And you could see them turn their heads like a dog does. And all I said was, "Turn it one more time and crack them." You know what I'm saying? So it gives you the opportunity to get more at the same time. And since I come from the harvesting aspect of this business, which is a whole different way of thinking. It's based on speed and how much you can get when you're shooting animals in order to get paid. So that's where these air rifles have really taken over in my world. A lot is because of that. And the other thing too is, like you said, they're quiet. They're ridiculously quiet. I mean, my 22 shoots under 79 decibels. So the average human speaks at 80 decibels. So that's quiet. That's ridiculously quiet.
Oh yeah.
When I put a slug in it, it drops down to like 72 because it just takes up so much of that more area in the barrel, so it's a lot quieter. So it gives you a lot more opportunity with the quietness and the follow up. And like I said before, that sound they're not used to because it's not a crack like a firearm. It's more of a push sound, so it's totally, it's very foreign to most animals.
Right. And then you were talking about human hearing, like we hear at, we talk at about 80 decibels. Another nice thing about how quiet these things are is if you have people around.
Exactly.
If you need to kind of, I guess pardon this bad pun, but fly under the radar, on an airfield setting or in a in a farm setting or just in a populated area where you still have to take that shot.
Yes,
you
sir.
can shoot and nobody's gonna know. I mean, I've taken shots inside hangars with a safe backdrop.
Yes, sir.
And folks knew I was in there. They knew what I was gonna do. And I've already got 2 pigeons on the ground lining up on a third, and somebody walk over and say, "Hey, when are you going to shoot?"
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
no, so I've already taken 2 shots, and they were, I think at this instance, you said about 50 yards. I think they were like 20, 25 yards away around a corner. I think the pigeon hitting the concrete floor was louder than the PCP going off the first place.
Yeah.
That's. But especially being quiet like that too is, immediately if you got a good shot or not, because you can. It's so the PCP itself is so quiet, you can hear that whap when it hits whatever it hit. It might be the whap of the steel behind it, or it might be that dull thud of a breastplate. But you're gonna know just by the sound how'd you do.
Yeah. Exactly. We call it smack. When it hits the animals, call it pellets. Yeah, pellet smack or a slug smack, because that's another weird thing too, because it's not the sound of the rifle that scares them. It's literally that pellet smack when it hits the bird, because it's hitting it with such energy that it literally has a smack to it, and that's what 90% of the time scares the other birds or whatever you're shooting. It's mostly with birds. If I'm shooting coyotes, I don't get that. There's so much fur, so it kind of helps muffle that a little bit. But that pellet smack can be, if you're shooting, especially with me when I'm shooting on the farms, and I shoot on these certain farms a lot. The birds are trained to the pellet smack more than anything, so they know as soon as they hear a bird getting smacked, they kind of fly out of there.
Right, but then too, those are pressured birds. They're getting,
exactly.
They're going through the ringer pretty consistently.
Yes,
yeah, versus something like, kind of like a virgin parcel, like you get someplace you've never been before. They're not going to know that whap, like you mentioned earlier.
No.
Or like these pigeons in these hangars or a coyote or something like that. They don't know that sound.
No.
And it's definitely going to provide you with more opportunities, and it's just real time data to help you. The more you shoot, the more you get used to these things, the more you're going to learn them. You'll learn pretty much how to shoot them. So yeah, we're hitting up. We're getting close to an hour now. We're at about 45 minutes. Well, I'm going to ask you to. I know you're a wizard with one of these things. I'm going to ask you to kind of dispel some of your wisdom, if you don't mind. For somebody that's shooting them, do you have any tricks, like anything you like to do that you wouldn't mind sharing with our listeners to maybe help them become better, maybe either better shots or just better at harvesting wildlife?
Well, that's a good question, because I train guys around the country with PCPs out on the farms I actually shoot over, and the number one thing I tell the guys is start to learn to shoot with both eyes, or stop squinting and only shooting with one eye, and use I'm right eye dominated, so that is what I call my hunting eye. That's the eye that I use to look down the scope. Where my left eye, that's my shooter's eye. Where my left eye is my hunting eye. So that's the actual eye I use to get on. We're just talking birds right now. So if I see a bird that's getting ready to land, I mean, predominantly have switched my eye mostly to my left eye to watch it. And as soon as it gets close to landing, I switch it to my right eye. And that's the eye that says, okay, we're ready. And then that's when we pull the trigger. So being able to be able to use both eyes is, I won't call it a trick, but I think that's something that most people should start trying to use if they can, because you can pick up a lot of speed with both eyes faster, I think, than you can with using only one eye or squinting, you know. As far as tricks go, um, well, there's some really weird ones here since we live in Arizona, but I've noticed that leaving your rifle out in the heat actually builds up a little bit better pressure, and I get almost, I think, another 50% more shot count because of the temperature. So, you know, that's one funny thing that we have here, but that doesn't necessarily work for everybody else.
Right. Yeah. Not everybody else is shooting at 116 degrees.
Exactly. But as far as shooting tricks go, I think, I don't really call them tricks, but I think there's just some really cool tools. And I think, I just posted one on Instagram. I think that everybody should really get into is any type of shooting app that you can put on your phone to help you understand the ballistics of what you're shooting. It will put you right on exactly to a point what you're shooting at. Because I see a lot of guys I've take out to farms and they don't know what their zero is. They don't know how far. They basically don't know anything. But they're shooting at animals, and you're sitting there going, well, I'm glad you're missing them, but you're going to connect sooner or later. That's just the laws of the numbers there. But is it you're going to kill it or are you going to hurt it? So I think those ballistics apps are really help out. There was a Streetlock, and then there's Chair Gun. Those are the two top ones used for air rifles, and they both are very good. They both are very in depth. One is more than the other, depending on how much you really want to know. But I think I wouldn't call it, like I said, tricks. So I think that's a good tip to start using that and really understand what the ballistics is and what your gun is capable of doing. Because a lot of people have noticed that their gun and their scopes are way capable more than what they think, and they dummy it down to the point where it makes them look bad when it comes to shooting, when they could look like rock stars if they just took the time and understood the ballistics, understand the rifle in general. No different to using a firearm, except I think you need to learn it a little bit more because of the lack of power than a firearm. So I wouldn't say there's tricks, but I think that those two things are unique.
No, I think those are right on. I mean, I'm right there with, especially with the having both eyes open. I know, like, growing up around shooting all my life, I was always taught, mostly with shotguns, with archery tackle, always shoot two eyes. But I always tended to squint because I'm right eye dominant as well. I always tended to squint my left eye. But in the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, in my shooting and hunting career, I've definitely noticed just open up the eye, get used to it, practice. I mean, definitely got to practice with having both eyes open, but just get in that habit. Like, don't start right up. I mean, if you have like a high power scope, I mean, don't crank it right up to 12 or 16 power and then try to do it right off the bat. That's going to take a little more practice, but back it off 3, 4, 6, whatever your lower end is, and kind of train your eyes to look together, one more magnified than the other, and then you'll,
yes, sir.
You will pick them up. I mean, like you were just saying, that's how you track them. When you got one coming in, you kind of track them with your off eye, and then when he comes down, you just kind of, I mean, because there is a mentality to it. You kind of train your head to do it, but you can just kind of switch which eye is focusing more, and complete that shot.
Correct.
And especially in your line of work, the way, 'cause, I mean, we are similar. We both use these for wildlife, but it's two different aspects. I'm taking shots once in a while, and like nuisance control. I mean, this is how you make your living. I mean, you put more pellets down the barrel in an hour than I do in a year.
Yeah. And like I tell people,
that's why we talked to you, because I mean, we figured, well, let's do one on PCPs. Let's go to the source. Let's talk to somebody that knows what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, my partner and I, Holly, we'll shoot, we could shoot 100 collar doves an hour, per each, so we're pulling the trigger pretty much, um, my average, not this last year, the year before, I did 35,000 collared doves myself. So, that's a lot of pellets. That's a lot of shooting. That's, people do the math and go, there's no way. I'm like, well, you can come out and watch a shoot, or you can watch my videos and see, I pull the trigger almost every 3 seconds, majority of the time. So you've got to get that. It's a speed thing with me. Like I said, that's how I get paid, when it comes to certain things. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I was kind of going to touch on this later on, but you already brought it up. So you do videos. You've got a YouTube channel, and I mean you put some of these shoots, and I've seen some of your videos on little. I call them tricks. I guess you're really tips. But you mind telling folks what your channel is?
Yeah, so I have a YouTube channel. I've started. I think this is my 4th year now, going on 5th year. It's Jim's Fun Bird Hunting on YouTube, and it's basically just showing you some of the shots using PCP rifles, on jobs sometimes, and just in general, just some removals from some friends and stuff like that have some stuff. But that channel, it's getting popular. I haven't done a video in a while, but it's got just over 11,000 followers, which is really cool, and it's helped me, train some people that couldn't make it here and so forth, so they kind of get an idea. So yeah, appreciate you letting me put that out there.
Oh yeah, well, I'm appreciative of you agreeing to come on our podcast. So some other things, like I think it's really cool. Like, I mean, while you already mentioned Instagram, I mean, you do the social media as well. But your social media's got a different name than it's not the same as your YouTube channel, right?
Well, yeah. So my social media, because it is social media, and I've got three or four different social media. I got my personal page, but there's a lot of ex-military, heavy hitters. So I don't get on that as very much because people tend to get on there and bug them and so forth. So that's real personal stuff. So my normal page is just under my Jim Walton. I do have a Farm Snipers page, but I don't do much there because it is social media, and I do, you get people that attack you over what you're doing when you post videos. So I don't do much there as far as I go. I post more stuff on Instagram, even though it's owned by Facebook. It's got, I think you're allowed to do a little bit more there. So, but I do the Facebook thing and the Instagram thing because people do call me for questions, and I'll help people bid on project shooting jobs around the country. So I help them out with stuff like that, and any questions or anything. And sometimes I post stuff just to make you think a little bit differently when it comes to these PCPs. So yeah.
Very cool. Well, I mean, we're approaching an hour. I kind of want to probably ought to start wrapping this thing up just because it's getting to be an hour. Folks are going to be sick of listening to us jabber. I mean, I just want to thank you for coming on. I mean, do you have any parting thoughts, parting bits of wisdom, anything you might want to? I know one I had for you is, I mean, you've been shooting for a while. You're knowledgeable. What's something that you know now that you wish you knew when you first started?
Good question. Wow. That I did well. One of the things I noticed that I know now, and I think technology has a lot to do with it also, but not necessarily to a point. Is it's all about, like I said, it's about the calibers and so forth. I was a guy that thought, typical American, bigger, better, harder, and I've learned the total opposite, that sometimes, I shoot a lot of iguanas in Puerto Rico, and I went to Puerto Rico with a 357 and a 25 caliber thinking that was the right size. And here's my guide that was helping me learn about these animals, and he's using a 177. I'm like, what? So it's a different way of thinking, is to just, sometimes it's not about brute power. Air rifles is about finesse and fine tuning. So I think that's the biggest thing with that, is sometimes you don't need that big sledgehammer. You just need that ball peen hammer,
Right. Yeah. It's more about that finesse and putting it in the right spot rather than just hitting any old spot.
Exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
No, I
Sure.
like that. I like that analogy though. I think I'm going to use that in the future. Is you got to have a ball peen, not the sledge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They both will kill. It just depends on where you put it. So
Right. um. Yeah, Jim. I think that's all I got for you.
all right.
Is there anything you got? Any parting comments?
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me to be on here and talk about PCPs. It's a passion with me, and I try to get as many people involved, especially shooters that are, into firearms, to just take a look at them and stop making such a big joke. And once they pull their trigger and they have that smile, they're hooked. So, anybody can contact me on Facebook or any of those places and ask me questions if they want. But I do appreciate you guys having me on here, and you guys doing a great job with this podcast, and I'm going to continue listening to the future stuff. So appreciate it.
Well, hey, I appreciate the nice comments.
Hey, Jim, Cody here. Thank you very much for coming on. We will post links to all your social media in our show notes. And we just really appreciate you taking an hour out of your night and sharing your knowledge with everyone. I just have a couple questions. What is your most valuable tool?
My most valuable tool as far as physically, or I would say my brain, but I don't know if that's the right question.
No, that's not what I was going. What would you say is your favorite gun or your most valuable tool that you use to help with utilizing your guns? Something like that.
Well, so here's the thing. Now, I've got a lot of people screaming at me. I got guys that literally screaming at me. So I went down from 6 rifles to 2 rifles, and everybody's like, "What? I can't believe you sold their gun that made your name." And I'm like, "It's just a tool, So my favorite rifle right at this minute is definitely the Raws. I've had FX, like I said, I've had Daystate. I've had many of the high end guns. That's all I buy is high end guns. Nothing comes close. I don't care. Yeah, some guys have these FX impacts and they love them and they're great guns, but I don't see them in the real world of hunting and harvesting and what I do that can hold up. So my favorite gun is my HM 1000 X in 22 caliber. That thing is just a laser beam. I'm talking, like I said, 290 yards with a pellet rifle, putting on a bird that's not even 12 inches tall at 290 yards and putting it right in its crop. That's amazing to me.
Excellent. Thanks. And I just had one other thing, Jesse. Back to you may want to edit this a little bit, but going back to the tanks, one thing, just a resource for the airport guys. Most airports have a fire station there, and some of them have their own fill stations there, which they can use, or they can swap out Scott tanks. There's stuff on the market now that can connect your Scott tank right to a PCP or fill from a Scott tank, and that's a resource that most airports have that could save them some money initially as far as purchasing a new scuba tank. So that's just one thing I just want to add in there. So
yeah, we have one. Yeah, it's usually on the rescues. On the rescue trucks.
Yeah. And they usually have extras, and then they can just swap them out, or they have their own fill station right there. So I learned that because we have in upstate New York and maybe in Arizona too, there's a shortage of scuba shops.
Actually, there's a scuba shop there's actually a lot of scuba stores here.
Arizona is full of scuba shops, no doubt.
That makes perfect sense.
It's only 5 hours to the ocean.
Bridge.
We've got a lot of lakes here and a lot of divers, so it makes a lot of sense that people do have scuba stores here.
Okay. Yeah,
it's actually a very popular. I think half the folks I work with have at least a little bit of diving experience. It's actually a very popular pastime.
Yeah.
All that oceanfront property.
Sooner or later.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for being on tonight. I really appreciate it. And,
I appreciate everything you guys done, and I loved having you guys come out and train with me and work with me there, and so forth. But you know, it's great guys meeting guys like you that have light-minded and coachable and trainable. That's what you have to be in this environment in order to learn stuff. And I find a lot of people are not either one. You have to be both. You can't be one. So you guys are definitely coachable, trainable. I've learned stuff from you guys by, you know, following, especially Jesse on his travels, you know, and stuff like that. I've seen some areas I'm like, wow, and stuff like that. But, you know, just watching you guys do what you guys did on a farm, I learned some stuff too that helps me help teach you guys better also. So I do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
Yes, sir.
Well, all right, Jim. I'm not sure where I'm going to cut this out, so I guess we just hit the 1 hour. Let's get this thing wrapped up, and I'll let you go get out your hair. We can actually get some outdoor time before this storm actually hits tonight.
All right. I appreciate it, Jesse. Thanks very much for having me on. And any other time you feel like having another conversation on PCPs and maybe some more advanced stuff, let me know. I'd love to be back on.
Oh, yeah. You'll be getting that phone call real soon.
All right. Great.
Have
a great night.
Yeah. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.